Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. We are going to be talking about the title race. The title race. We've had a couple of different streams kind of talking around it, but in this show, we are going to talk about the title race, how we're feeling ahead of a game against West Ham that should be smooth sailing, and what we're seeing from Manchester City. Look, I am scared. There you go. I'm scared. Because Manchester City do seem like they have found another gear. Another gear where I am questioning whether or not there are games in which they will drop points in the Premier League. Now, a couple of weeks ago, a lot of Arsenal fans were talking about, well, we're out of Europe and they're still in the Champions League. And, maybe the fixture congestion will trip them up somehow. But ever since, seeing them play against Bayern Munich and absolutely destroying them, I was kind of like, maybe not. Maybe there is no game where they'll drop points. And so it's leaving me feeling a little bit like, okay, it's in our hands technically because, we win all of our games. We go to the Etihad, we get a point or so and we can still win the title. But I'm also feeling like it's in their hands because they will be confident at the Etihad against us, I think. And a lot of people were, talking about the game against Leicester today. Now, I don't know why anybody, would have been watching that game thinking that Leicester were going to do anything. But in that game, there was a lot of talk about like, oh, well, Leicester, they had some chances towards the end. They could have easily drawn that game. It's called game state, you guys. Like Manchester City had taken off a lot of their players. And then Leicester started to try to score goals and try to attack. And it was working because Manchester City had taken their foot off of the gas. We know very well what that's like because we do it all the time at the Emirates. We get 3-0 up and then we give up a goal, right? And then they get a couple of chances and it looks close, but it's really not. And so I wouldn't take much from that second half performance from City. The job was done. And they're going to play their best ever football against us. Like they're not going to take their foot off of the gas unless they are smashing us. They're not going to take their foot off of the gas. And so we have to assume that Manchester City are going to play as good as they possibly can against us. We're going to play as good as we possibly can against them. And hopefully we're able to get a point. But it looks a little bit scary. It really, really does. And I'm not saying that, oh, are you surprised, Jessica? Like Manchester City are, back-to-back champions. They're this and that. They have world-class players in every single position and on their bench. But it's different when you're actually having to pay attention. Manchester City are the type of team that I've never really paid any attention to, like in terms of like really deep thought into, what are they doing? Because they always just win. And we've never been anywhere near them. Now that we're near them, I'm kind of like, where are the weaknesses? Where are the drop points going to come from? Is it possible? And it's 100% still possible. It's just we're going to have to be damn near perfect in this run-in, I think, in order to get it over the line. And we've had to be really, really good. But it's kind of like what Liverpool fans were saying at the beginning of the season. Like, you have to be almost perfect to beat this Manchester City side. And that's what we're going to have to do. And so I thought we could have like a real conversation about this. Like, I'm not saying that Arsenal are done and all this kind of stuff, but I'm just telling the truth. Like, I am scared, because they look good and we need to be better than that. We need to be better than that we're watching. And that looks pretty damn good. So there you go. Let's see. B Doc says Arsenal shouldn't fear a team who they haven't beat in the last 8 Premier League matchups. Wilson, have you smoked this morning? I guess you're responding to maybe somebody else. Wilson is saying, I'm not scared of Manchester City whatsoever. Arsenal should not be fearing anyone at all. I still believe that Arsenal can win the league because of our mentality and resilience. Now, I do want to have put a separation in there between Arsenal fans and Arsenal. I don't think the players should be scared because, they're professional athletes, they have to just take care of business. Fans have a completely different role in all of this. And I think it's perfectly fine in our little group chats and, online and on YouTube to talk about how we're truly feeling about the team and our title hopes, but also know that like when we play against West Ham tomorrow, we're going to be like, we have every chance of winning the title. Let's keep our chances alive, like all that kind of stuff, And so I am feeling scared of Manchester City, but I don't think the team is. And I think that's the kind of like the best thing is that they've shown no fear. And I think a lot of that has to do with them being so young, because they just feel like they're playing with mostly freedom, Let's see. Lucas says, I wouldn't call us favorites even if we won at Anfield. So it's tough for me to say I'm scared. I'm enjoying the experience. Well, let me know how you've been enjoying this experience. Like, what have you been doing? What have you been reading? How have you been doing this? Because for me, I have not enjoyed any of this. Like, I really have not. I am just like, I haven't enjoyed, like genuinely enjoyed an Arsenal game since we were in the pink kit in the summer, where the sun was shining and we were scoring goals for fun against Bournemouth. But once I realized that we were really good and we had a chance at the title, every game for me felt like the end of the world. And so I have not been enjoying this experience, Lucas. It has been so stressful for me, but I wouldn't trade it to be comfortable in second or third. Do you know what I mean? I know that I've seen some Arsenal fans say they would prefer to be in second or third comfortably, instead of being in a title race and potentially lose it. No, I think the fans need to get used to being in these positions, and also the players need to be used to getting in these positions, because if we expect Arsenal to be able to, be a really big team and compete at the highest level, they will experience failures, but they have to learn how to rebound from those failures. And so if we were to not win the league, I'd rather them have that experience than not, if that makes sense. And I'd like us to have that experience. Yo-Yo says, this is exciting, not scary. You need to support Fulham or Palace if you're not looking forward to this. I support the Arsenal for times like these. Shots fired. Okay. C. Wilder says, I feel permanently sick. Ali A says, Jess, you have to enjoy it because football moves very quickly. Yeah, I hear that. We have to enjoy it. And I know that there's all this ever, spoken about narrative that next season we won't have a chance at it and then we're not going to be close to it. I still feel like, that's mostly rivals feeling like, well, we're going to be better, so you're going to be worse. I don't necessarily feel like that's actually the case. I think Arsenal will get better, and even if other teams get better, we'll still be kind of in and around those first and second spots, maybe third, depending on what happens. But yeah, I want to try to enjoy it, but at the same time, like, it's very stressful. But watching the games back after we won them is great. Tashima says City will win every game. It will be decided at the Etihad. Martin N says it's stressful, but I am enjoying it, which is probably the best combination of all of it. Robin says, hi, Jess, Man City beat us and the title will be gone. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think if they beat us at the Etihad, it's done. I think we have to get something there for sure. But again, even if we get something, we still have to beat Brighton and Chelsea and all these other teams. So, I mean, we are nowhere near anywhere near the end. Gamma Mail says, I think Arsenal fans should start mentally preparing themselves for the most likely outcome. And of course, a lot of people are ready to mock Arsenal should they likely not win the league. I don't really care about people mocking us. I'm more about what do Arsenal do after not winning the league. Arsenal were not a team that was even supposed to be in this title race. And quite frankly, if we didn't exist, there'd be nobody else, in it, because nobody else is really near us or Man City. They'd be walking the league right now. And so, I get the whole rival fans are going to banter us. But if you're 30, 40 points behind us, who are you talking to? Are you a Chelsea fan? Didn't beat Brighton today. Looked a shambles. Frank Lampard is your manager. Are you a Spurs fan? Couldn't even beat Bournemouth at home after you mocked us for beating them. Are you a Man United fan? Was in the title race 5 or 6 times, but you're not in it now. Don't really care about, rival fans mocking us. I'm more concerned about what we do if we don't win it. How do we make sure that we learn from that and grow stronger? And from now until the end of the season, it's about trying to win the title. I'd rather be in our position than any rival's position. Do you know what I mean? And from an Arsenal perspective, there's going to be a lot of fans that don't take the banter well. Who cares? After a couple of weeks, it'll go away. We'll start talking about transfers, and there's always another season. So rivals that are below us that aren't really doing anything this season, I don't know if I really have the energy to really care if they're mocking us or not, because they'd rather be in our position than theirs. Nashville says, you need to change your outlook on sports if you're not enjoying these games. I hate when we are playing meaningless games at this point. I'd rather us be playing these games than not. But what I will say is, I think also because I'm a content creator as well, like I relive every result multiple times, on my channel, on other channels. And so it's a little bit more stressful, I think, for me, because I can't just like shut down everything and just like move on from it. It's kind of like my life. So that's a big part of it. Like when I wasn't a content creator, it wasn't as bad. Do you know what I mean? But again, I'd rather be in the situation, but I can't say that I've been like, yes, this is amazing. Because every single game, I'm just like, as soon as we score the first goal, I'm like, okay, are we at the 90th minute? Is it done? Is it done? Is it done? Are we done? Is it done? Saida says, I was nervous beforehand, but ever since we dropped points at Anfield, I'm less anxious, as most of the media think City are the favorites. Yeah, I think the momentum shift really did happen after the Anfield game. I think it also because of the way that it happened. I think bottling the 2-goal lead made it really seem like Arsenal, like they crumbled and they fumbled it and that's it. And now Man City are just going to run away with it. And there could be still some twists and turns in the story, but a lot of the momentum shift happened off of the back of that game. And I think all of us really felt it, but still a ways to go. Going to Anfield and playing the way that we did, at least in the first half, made me feel a little bit better about going to the Etihad and going to St. James and getting something from those games. Because in the past, we went to big grounds, regardless to if the team was playing, the best football of their lives or the worst football. We just haven't been able to go up there and do anything. And Arsenal at least, got something. And so hopefully they've learned from the Anfield experience that you can't get up 2-0 and then just start kind of like coasting. You have to stay locked in the entire time. But, there could still be some twists and turns. But yeah, that momentum shift was a pretty it was a pretty rough one. It was very much like Arsenal are in charge, boom, turn, Man City are winning the league. Tony says we have 2 games in 11 days between today and April 26th. So much can change. I'm managing poor, to be fair, by focusing one game at a time. Exactly. Easier said than done, but that's definitely the way to go about it, right? Hayala says we never play City with a full team. If we need them with Saliba at the back and Jesus up front and Partey in the center, we are coming with something. City haven't met us with Jesus. I think I've only seen Thomas Partey play against Manchester City once in one half. He did play when we lost to them at home last season, I believe, and he played the first half in the FA Cup, so I wouldn't say that like our chances of beating them are like 100% with him in the team or not. It does give us a better chance. But I just think you have to have some luck and you have to be playing as good as you possibly can to beat Manchester City at home. And, without Saliba, I feel like that luck is not really on our side. Saliba being missing is a huge blow for us. And as good as even if Rob Holding played his best game, I still think there would be parts of Saliba's game that we'd still be like, we needed that, so we've never really had that type of luck. But at the same time, I look at, Liverpool's teams over the years, they haven't had that much luck with injuries every single time, and you still have to persevere. And I think that's just a part of it. Manchester City are a team that never really seem to be hurt by their injuries because they have so many good players available to them all the time. But a team like Arsenal that are not going to have that same luxury have got to get used to winning games and churning out results regardless to like if they have an injury or two, because if we haven't learned anything from this season, as soon as one person comes back, another person goes off. One person comes in, one person goes out. That's just the name of the game. So, one, we have to make our depth better. You know, this should be the last season where we don't have suitable cover for central defensive midfielder, last season where we don't have suitable cover at the back. You know what I mean? And, but the Arsenal team has to learn how to get results. And I think for the most part, we've been okay. But we'll see what this team is really made out of, because I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't think William Saliba is going to play at the Etihad. I really don't. I know that we're hoping for it, but I just can't see how he's out for 6 weeks, and comes back in and is anywhere near the level of fitness that would be required to do well at the Etihad. So, I've already prepared my head for that, So yeah. Joseph says, thank you so much for your super chat. Says we just need to win the next 2 and it's do or die at the Etihad. Yeah, exactly. And obviously we have West Ham tomorrow. And it's a game that should go to plan, but we know in the Premier League, because of the level of the competition, there are no easy games. Every single game you have to show up to. And so the boys need to show up for sure. I know West Ham, they struggled against Ghent in the Europa Conference League. And remember how I was telling you guys that yesterday I wasn't going to be available because I was going to be doing the preview for the Premier League. So I was able to talk to a West Ham fan face to face because I don't know very many, right? And, I was asking her like kind of what happened. And she was just like, they didn't play well. They were lucky to really get the draw. And they had to use some of the starters that they were trying to rest in that game midweek. So even though it's a London derby and we're away from home, to me, that's an advantage. Players that have played midweek, I think one of the biggest issues from a West Ham perspective has been that they have European football. And once they got European football, it really messed with their ability to fight in the league. And so we've been rested for an entire week. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be winning this game at all. We really should be going there and winning. And we've kind of already throughout the preview kind of went, the key matchups and things like that. Holding will probably be starting, and Kedia, who I said in my preview was a doubt, is actually available. He was in first team training today. He will be available. So that's a little bit of a boost too. But this team should be going to West Ham and feeling confident and winning. Tunnel vision, blinders on, focusing on what we can control. If we have a 9-point gap on City by the time that we play at the Etihad, I don't know how they don't, use that as an advantage. So I'm feeling good about tomorrow, but at the same time, I just want it to be over with the 3 points. Let's see. Lucas says some rumors on Twitter about Zinchenko. I have seen those. Didn't really, it's hard because these little things that come up here and there. One of my biggest gripes is that we hear about these players' injuries from all these different little accounts and prior to the game, and it's often hours before, and it's so annoying. And it's just like, I almost want to just only go through it one time, and that's when the lineup comes out. But like, I'm seeing it, so it's like but this is just from what I saw. But Zinchenko he didn't train the day after Anfield or whatever, like that first training, like he didn't train. Him and Ben White both stayed off because of recovery. And then Zinchenko was never seen in training again, and he wasn't in the training photos, the most recent training photos. And so people are saying that he's probably injured. Now, from my perspective, just because you're not in the training photos doesn't necessarily mean that you're injured. Sometimes we make assumptions that aren't actually true, but let's just say Zinchenko was unavailable for this game. Again, like, it's not that big of a deal. We have Kieran Tierney. And so I don't view a Zinchenko injury as like, oh my gosh, that's it. For everybody that's been crying for weeks about Tierney needs to play minutes, well, this is your chance. You know, Zinchenko off, Tierney in. We should be able to play 100%. No changes. Inverted fullback, fine. I wonder if this would be a decent opportunity maybe to try the Kivior thing at left back, but at the same time, it's a little bit too early to be trying things with him. But if Zinchenko were to be injured and I were to think about, okay, what would I like to see instead of Zinchenko in a big game if he was not available? We spoke about it. Kivior at left back is probably something I'd look at to just shut down everything at the back and be a little bit more secure. We also spoke about, Kieran Tierney and the revisionism around what kind of defender he is. He may be a better defender than Zinchenko, but the idea that he's like this really good 1v1 defender is kind of not it. When Tierney was a starter, we often criticized and it was often talked about how he wasn't a great 1v1 defender. He works really hard and he tries to get back and do his thing and he's fast and quick, but he's not that much better of a 1v1 defender than Zinchenko, in my opinion. He's more of a threat going forward. He's a attacking fullback. That's his bag. That's what he's really good at. And so if I was thinking of a scenario where I'm like, okay, if I want to really shut Manchester City down, I really want to shut Newcastle down, I really want to be secure at the back, I do think maybe I'd consider Kivior in that Tomiyasu type of role. But the problem with that is that Kivior hasn't looked great in some of the performances that he's had. So maybe you just go with Tierney. But for me, that doesn't mean that we're going to be locked down defensively and he can't get beat. I remember a game where Mahrez just absolutely destroyed Kieran Tierney and took his lunch money. And so, there you go. But again, in a West Ham game where they're not the best team in the world, I still back Tierney to play well. We're fine because everything else should be the same. Even though we have Holding at the back, you have Gabriel, you have White, you would have your same midfield three and front options. It's like the good thing is like now we're fully stocked attacking wise. We have Jesus, we have Saka, we have Martinelli, we have Trossard, we have Nketiah, we have Nelson, we have ESR. So going forward is fine. Tony says if KT let him do his thing, White does the Zinni from the right. That just depends on how much that's going to hinder Saka, because Saka, being the combination player that he is, needs players around him in order to create space. And so what my fear is that if you keep White back and don't get that overlap, Saka becomes a little bit isolated over there. And so that's why Ben White has to kind of do the overlapping. But I hear what you're saying in terms of like just, shift things the other way. But I think that's easier said than done. But that's the issue with Tierney is that if you want to get the best out of him, you have to change things on the right. And if you make Ben White be a little bit more stay back and be more defensive, that hurts Bukayo Saka, who's probably one of our best players. So how do you make all that work? And that's something that Arteta has to deal with. Boy says it's not that Tierney is a better defender, it's just that he keeps our shape more traditional. We shall see if that turns out to be a boon or a hindrance. And this is all just to put this back. Like, I just want to say this a couple of times, is that this is hearsay on Twitter. Like, this is not 100% team news. The team can come out and it can be Zinchenko tomorrow. But, this is what, some people are saying. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying like 100% Tierney will start and Zinchenko is out, but, if Zinchenko were to be injured, this would be a better time than in a couple of weeks, but again, this is not 100%, you guys. Tibui says, thank you so much for your super chat, by the way. Says Pep lineup with Stones, Rodri, and a back three is devastating. It's really hard to beat. He's found like the perfect combination to try to get the best out of the group. Keys B Knight says this could be a good chance for Plan B in motion. I think every chance, like I feel like sometimes there are opportunities for you to like things just fall into place for you to like have an opportunity to try things that you maybe not have really wanted to from the beginning. And so try Tierney, if that were to come to it, play Tierney. But if we're winning, why not try Kivior at left back? I have this feeling that that's going to be our best chance, Zinny or not, to get something out of the game at the Etihad. We're not going to have the ball, so it's difficult for me to see how Zinchenko's qualities give us any sort of advantage when we don't have the ball as much. So how do we shut down, their attack and then remain solid and then attack from there? I just wish that I felt more confident about Kivior right now. Not that I don't think that he'll become a good player for Arsenal, but he just hasn't had he's had not even sparks yet. Because his performance against Sporting, I think, wasn't great. And then he had a little sprinkle, I think, against Leeds or something, maybe Crystal Palace, I forget which one. And then he came on at Anfield and just, it didn't hit, did it? So, hey, let's see. Thab says Zinny is better against weaker teams because we'll have more of the ball. Exactly. Arsenal Granny says we go with what we have, who we have. Exactly. What else can you do? What else can you do? I still blame that bald-headed loser, Ten Hag, for as soon as he said that we don't have any injuries, we started getting injuries. F you. Tony says it's going to be Shigazo. Not exactly the game I'd throw Kiwi. Exactly. But that's why I'd at least try it to see if he can do it. But this is somebody who played in the World Cup, but it's much different going up against the best team in Europe, and being expected to perform when you barely even know your teammates, I was like, does Kivior know he's at Anfield playing for Arsenal right now? Does he understand? Because he was lost. Okay. Karg says we should have more defending next season. City has Laporte, Ake, Akanji, Stones, Diaz as center back. They're all world class. Imagine we have the same luxury. Well, most teams don't, because not most teams have the same resources as Manchester City. So, I think the idea that we would have 4 world-class center backs and, they would just exist, it's just not. Even Arsenal's best teams always had one guy that you didn't really want to play, but when he played, you just had to get on with it. I think of somebody like Pascal Sigan, he was in that invincible team, but he was crap, but you had Martin Keown and, Kolo Toure and Sol Campbell. And so, you had 3, you had 2 prime age and then a younger one, and then a guy that you were like, damn, if we have to play him, we're effed, but we got to do what we got to do. We're kind of in that scenario now. One thing that we had spoken about a couple of days ago was the idea of Roel Walters coming into the team. And just like that, there's been rumors out there that he's going to be added into the first team next season. And he's somebody that can play left back, center back, and right back. And so I would love for him to replace Holding. But I think from an Arsenal perspective, we'll have 2 or 3 really good options. We have Kivior, Saliba, and Gabriel. Please don't sleep on Kivior. He will probably be fine. Just let him cook a little bit. And then maybe Roel Walters. We're always going to have a kid or something like that. City are just, remember, it wasn't too long ago where we were talking about City, doing things outside of the lines to get to where they've been. So let's not act like we're not playing against an entity that's playing by different rules, Ngoni says, it's not a fluke. We're first, Jess, no fear. Thank you so much for your super chat. I don't think it's a fluke. I think we're more than deserving to be where we're at, and we have been the best team in the league so far. I think that for sure. So it's not a fleek. It's not a fluke. But I think it's just, I just fear a little bit of what I've seen from City over the last couple of weeks. And I always keep it funky with you guys, Diallo says, hey, hi, Jess. I watched the City from start to finish. Leicester crumbled in the first 15 minutes, but they caused City troubles. That wasn't spotless. I get what you're saying. But I guess my question would be from you guys. We were 3-0 up against, Crystal Palace, Leeds. Let's take maybe Leeds as an example. We feel like we battered them and we had a great game against them and we had nothing to worry about. But they created some chances at the end of that game where it could have been 3-2, right? Would you, if you heard rivals saying that, Leeds crumbled at the beginning, and they caused Arsenal trouble and it wasn't spotless, how would you respond to that? Because I think my response to that would be we took the foot off the gas. Like, we took our foot off the gas. We smashed them in the first half. Then they tried to play after we made some, substitutions, but we were already on easy street. That's how I feel about this City performance, is that, yes, it wasn't perfect, but they played against Bayern Munich in the week, smashed them, then took care of business in the first 15 minutes against Leicester, smashed them, and then they took off Rodri, Haaland, Grealish, KDB, the guys that came in, tried to do their thing, but Leicester then started to play after that, and they got a couple of chances. But who's to say that if Maddison makes his chance that they don't perk back up and score the fourth? That's what always happens to us, right? So I don't want to over-index that performance because Leicester is shit. Man City smashed them early on, and I just think it was game state, to be honest. Blaze says Arsenal fans already start slander Zinchenko. They did the same thing on Saliba, Fabio Vieira, Martinelli, and Gabriel before the World Cup. We always need a target. We know that. I mean, I think there's always room for, critical analysis of our players. Like, that's why people do podcasts and things like this. But where I tend to draw the line is where we start to pretend as though our players are only their mistakes and act like they haven't been brilliant. And that's, I think you have to talk about the mistakes that they make, be critical of that, put that away. And if they've been mostly good the entire time, you don't act as if they are their mistakes. And I think Gabriel has really suffered from that. Martinelli had a little bit of that as well. And Zinchenko is like the next, and Odegaard has also been spoken about very poorly after the Anfield game. So, but if they weren't there, then, how would we have performed? If we took out, like, do you think, I guess there's a good question. If Zinchenko and Odegaard weren't in this Arsenal team and we had, I don't know, Tierney in there instead of him, ESR maybe, like, do we think that there, maybe not, maybe it's not a great question, but like, if we didn't have them, would we be in the same spot? And I'm not sure that I think that we would be. Who else were we looking at? Let's say if we had Aaron Hickey and Maddison in there, would we be in the same spot? Because a lot of people would say, yeah, Maddison, he's clutch, he's good. That guy can't stay fit. He can't stay fit. And Aaron Hickey, I don't know if you watched him at Brentford, but he looks average, so if we made different choices, I don't think that we'd be in the same position. Can't say for sure, but Odegaard and Zinchenko technically have been the players that have made us dominant against 98% of the league. The only teams that we've struggled against are like Man City, Liverpool in the second half, and, we struggled to break down Newcastle, but everybody else we've been able to do stuff against, so I'm not really feeling it, Let's see. Tamim says, if Arsenal can't be like City, Chelsea, United, Newcastle to sign top players to strengthen our squad, then why support Kroenke and hope for major trophy at the same time? No, makes sense. Time wasting. When have Newcastle signed Bruno Guimaraes, but we've also signed top players. So what do you mean? Why is Newcastle grouped in there? Kieran Trippier, he's not better than any player that we have. Botman, he's not better than Gabriel. When did Newcastle start signing top players? Anthony Gordon, would you rather have him in your team than Martinelli? No, I don't know why Newcastle is in here. That's just, you're going too far. United, they've signed top players, obviously, but it's not always about how much you spend. It's about, do you spend well? And I think Manchester United and Arsenal do things differently. Chelsea, they've spent 600 million and they're sitting in 10th or 11th with like 39 points. Manchester City are the only team that I look at and say they do almost everything perfect. They do almost everything perfectly. And you have to be pretty much perfect to beat them. Look at Liverpool. They didn't spend a lot of money on big players, and they competed with them for 5-6 seasons and only got one Premier League. So I kind of get what you're saying, but I do feel like you're trying to make a problem out of nothing. Like, Arsenal have bought well, and the players that we bought may have not been top players when we bought them, but they're top players now. So, like, what are you crying about? Like, we are fighting for a title against the best team in Europe that only Liverpool have been able to seem to really compete with for the last 5 or 6 seasons. So, like, relax. Like, I get it, but, like, you know, and I think we always are like, we don't buy top players because we don't spend 90 million on Antony. We don't spend money on top players because we don't spend 86 million on blank player that's not really performing at the team that they're at. It's not always about how much you spend. It's about, did you spend well? Trossard, that's been an excellent signing. Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko, they don't have to cost 80, 90 million for us to have bought top players. Like, let's be for real. Like, come on. Hugo says there's a reason Napoli and Arsenal have had their eyes on the same players. Look at them now. Antonio Banks says, Jess, I feel like we have to bully City performance wise to win at the Etihad. I'm thinking, oh yeah, Isak is a top player for sure. But we bought Gabriel Jesus, and if you don't think Gabriel Jesus is a top player, I suggest you go to the doctor right away and say, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I feel ill. Because only a sick person would think that Gabriel Jesus is not a good player. So yes, they bought top players, but so have we. Like, Odegaard right now, you probably couldn't touch him unless you started the bidding at 75 million. Because as far as attacking mids go, the only attacking mid in the league that's better than him is Kevin fucking De Bruyne. And he's 30. And he's probably going to be in the best Premier League midfielders of all time. He's going to be on that list. He probably is already on that list. We do buy top players. We just don't spend stupid money. And you don't have to spend stupid money all the time to buy good players. And this summer, I do think that we'll spend that money for sure. Let's see. Leo Ngoni says, City have fallen off when everyone starts fawning over them. They will drop points at a very surprising times in the future. Even if they beat us at the Etihad and are ahead on goal difference, I will still have hope. I definitely hear you. We'll see. We'll see if they drop points. Yo-Yo says Arsenal are in the business of making top players. That's kind of who we've always been, so I get that. Abraham says, Jess, cut the BS. If we're spending smart, why are we unsuccessful in the last 15 years? Well, first of all, if we've been spending poorly for the last 15 years and we've been shit for the last 15 years, then why do you guys put all the blame on Arteta and Edu? Because they've only been at the club since 2018 or something like that, 2019. So if it's already been like that, then why are people acting like it was just them? I think you have to separate eras 100%. And I get that we drew at Anfield, and so now we don't feel like we're going to win the league. So we're going to go back to acting like we don't understand how football works. But since Arteta and Edu have been here, we have been getting better every single season. And we're fighting for a title right now against a juggernaut of a team in Manchester City, who I already said is not playing by the same rules as we are. So we're getting back to a point where we'll be more successful than we have been in the last 15 years. But we've been ran poorly, but that doesn't mean that we have to put Edu and Arteta and the group of people that are running the club now into that same group or that same category because we're mad. And we're being babies about drawing a game. We are buying good players. Like, from the moment that Arteta and Edu have come in, especially last summer, not this past summer, but the summer prior, when we brought in Ramsdale and Ben White, we've seen a market improvement. So if we're just going to act like we don't understand football and we don't understand that Arteta and Edu are improving the team, we don't understand that it takes time to build a team, then these conversations to me are just a little bit dry. They're not good conversations, because we all know that we went from a team that finished 5th to a team that's fighting for a title. And we're going to act like, oh my gosh, we're not buying good players. We can't be buying smart if we're not Like, let's be for real. We have bought smart. It's so weird that people just, it's like we go into this mode after we draw a game or we feel like we're not going to do something, and then we start acting like we can't see that Edu and Arteta, when they started working together and we started rebuilding a side, that we've gotten markedly better, and that a lot of that has had to do with the recruitment that they've done. And so if we don't, and if we haven't bought any top players, I hope you don't have a Saka kit, or well, not necessarily Saka. Let's say I hope you don't have an Odegaard kit. I hope you don't have a Zinchenko kit, not a Jesus kit, not a Gabriel kit, not a Saliba kit, not a Ramsdale kit, not a nothing. Because if none of those players are top players, I hope you don't have a kit, because you know they're top players. It's a joke. Like, we know that there's a line there of when Arsene was here. Then we went through huge crisis when he left, which always happens when a manager's been around for a long time. A lot of times there's a lot of chaos that follows. We know that. And we went through chaos, we went through crisis, and now we're settling the ship, and we're seeing tons of, we're going in the right direction, and people are like, we haven't bought any top players. Oh my gosh, because we drew at Anfield. Like, grow up. Be for real. Let's see. Dale says 4 years ago, I said I was on Arsenal. If I said I was in Arsenal, I can't see the rest of that. Ali says you don't have to spend silly money to get players. Lucas says those kids want FIFA signings for 100 million. Otherwise, they will cry. Matoma is clear of Anthony, but cost 3 million. And that's not to say, like, this is the thing. It's like having real conversations doesn't mean that I'm always constantly positive on everything Arsenal has done. So anybody who's new, make sure you guys subscribe. But even though I do feel like we need to separate what happened prior to Edu and Arteta and not lump them in with everything that Arsene and Raul and Ivan Gazidis did, I still feel like there are hurdles to jump over for this group. And we'll have Champions League. That's another thing that I wanted to talk about, was that I think we only need 4 more points to get Champions League football. And so with Champions League football and just fighting for a title, hopefully winning it, and having some of the best and brightest players, in the league, blah, 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 I expect us to buy really well. And I do expect this summer for us to probably break our transfer record, because that's what it's going to take to get a top midfielder at Arsenal. One of the reasons why I do think that we haven't spent a lot is because we haven't went into the midfield really. And when I say midfield, I'm not necessarily talking about Odegaard. I kind of think of him differently because he's like an attacking midfielder, but I mean in the positions for Thomas Partey and Xhaka, those players that are gonna replace them or compete with them. That is where the money is going to need to be spent. And in this market, to get the type of midfielder that we need for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons, they are not going to be a cut price, 30 million, 40 million. They're going to cost 80, 90 million, I believe. And so we will probably smash our transfer record this summer. So for everybody that's like, we don't spend money, we will do it this summer. And no, it probably won't be across 5 or 6 players. It'll probably be 1 or 2 really top players, but that's kind of what you do. Remember, I know nobody likes to hear this and they don't like the blueprint, but we're more aligned with Liverpool than we are with Manchester City in terms of how we spend. Liverpool put the foundation together. They built a very strong squad. And then when they decided they really wanted to compete, they went out there and bought Van Dijk and Alisson to complete their group. And they spent loads of money there. And I think Arsenal will do the same. But this idea that like we haven't spent money and we don't buy top players and we're just like, oh my gosh, because you're upset that we may not win the title, is just a farce. It really is. It's like boring. Boy says Trossard has been nothing short of dynamite and he didn't cost 80 million. People equate like how much you spend with success. And I do think you cannot avoid at the top level spending money, but you have to spend it smart. And we've been lucky that some of the players that we've been able to, grow through the academy, and players like Martinelli have saved us that money. But if we needed to buy those players, we would have had to spend 80, 90. If there was a Saka in the Bundesliga, we would have had to pay Anthony money to get him. So we're also lucky that we actually use our academy and we have smart recruitment. So we save ourselves that money. But as long as you have those types of players in your team, it doesn't matter how much they cost. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Ayanle says, people are crazy. There is no bigger player than Jesus. Never thought he will be an Arsenal player, and we are blessed. As for, just disagree. Madison and KDB are clear. Hope he keeps improving. I don't know if Madison is clear, but I hear what you're saying. I think you can maybe say Madison is clear because he's won a trophy. He's won the FA Cup, I think, with Leicester, and he led them to some of their best seasons, like beyond their title winning seasons. So if you think Madison is clear, then Madison is clear. I don't think a player that doesn't play, or is, rarely available for me can be clear of Odegaard at this point. But maybe because he's been in the league longer and he's won a trophy, you can say that. But I think it's really just KDB and Odegaard in terms of like right at this moment. But I hear you. 100%. Let's see. Diallo says, Jess is spitting facts. Those cronky out shouters need to look at where we are now and not where we were years ago. And I always say that, like, I'm not necessarily cronky out. I'm cronky skeptical. Like, until we're, really and my idea of like everybody has a different version of like what they think competing at the highest level is. I think that I like to sprinkle a little bit of reality into things. I think some people think the only time that you're competing and, you can not relax per se, but is if you're winning everything, but I think if we can get to a point where we're consistently fighting for titles and, we're winning silverware, and we're in the Champions League and getting out of the group and being really competitive, then I'm thinking that we're moving in the right direction and the Cronkies are doing their job. But I will not rest until we're there, so I'm not going to say like, they can just stay wherever and they're doing a fantastic job. I think Josh has done a lot better in these last 4 years than prior to that, and we've had more attention on Arsenal, more positivity at Arsenal, more of the right decisions coming back to back to back to get us to where we are right now. But we're nowhere near where we need to be in order to say we have our Arsenal back. We have a more, I think, an Arsenal that feels more like the Arsenal that maybe a lot of us grew up with, but it's nowhere near what it needs to be in order to say we have our Arsenal back. So I would say I'm a cronky skeptical type of person, but every time we lose a game or we drop a point, I don't revert back to, oh my God, the Cronkies, because we didn't draw at Anfield because of the Cronkies. Like we didn't, but I see a lot of that kind of like those narratives popping back up because people are afraid we're not going to win the title. And I think it makes conversations around your team so boring when every single time we don't do something, it's Arteta out, Cronky out, Edu out, everybody out, the players are shit. I told you, terrible. I'm seeing people, oh, we shouldn't have sacked Emery. Like I saw that today and I'm just like, I'm done. I'm done. Let's see. Simon Bond says, Jess, who's afraid of Godzilla? I don't know. Lee says, just enjoy the title race. There's no point in not enjoying watching your team play at this level. That's coming from a Man City fan. Diallo says, Jess, I think Buendia has started cooking. Don Unai found his home in England. It's a perfect place for him. We're having this conversation in a group chat today around, the Unai conversation. And I think, obviously, I think the misconception and the thing that people forget is that Unai didn't finish his career at Arsenal after, not getting top four and not winning the Europa League in Baku. He ended his Arsenal career and he left us in 13th in December. And so, no, it wasn't like they sacked Unai Emery and then brought in Arteta the next season, like right away. It was, we were in a crisis scenario where there was problems with Unai. He wasn't getting respect from the players. They didn't want him there. He had lost the dressing room. And most times when you lose the dressing room, the manager has to go regardless, So I can understand why some people feel like, oh, well, if we had given Unai Emery more time, he would have done better. But the reality is that it wasn't that he needed more time after not winning in Baku. It was, you're asking that our Arsenal needed to back Unai when we were sitting in 13th, free falling. If you were there, you remember we were free falling and the players didn't like him. And this group of players that I'm talking about, if they down tools on you, you're done. So the revisionism around Emery for me is a little bit like high school, elementary school thinking, because no, he didn't deserve more time, because if you can't have Arsenal in 13th, you can't have Arsenal in 13th free falling and looking like you can't recover, so I think that's why, I think about it differently. And then Arsenal decided to go in a different direction. They removed some people. We changed the way that we were doing things. Arteta came in and he got us from 13th to 8th, which was a struggle. I remember that. We finished outside of the European places, and then he won the FA Cup. And I do think winning the FA Cup definitely helped him in his next season, where he finished 8th again, and then we finished 5th, and now we're here. And so the Unai Emery thing, just everything happened for a reason. I think Arteta, the way that he's changed the way that the club does things, and things like, if you talk to anybody that is around Arsenal, they talk about Arteta changing everything at the club, not just the first team. And Arsenal needed a gut. You talk about renovation, Arsenal needed a full gut. They were a fixer upper. You looked at that shabby little house and you said everything but the foundation needs to go, because we were just, I think with Unai, we were trying to paper over cracks with players that we had spent a lot of money on, and we didn't want to waste them. So we brought in a manager that we thought could be a quick fix, a band-aid. It didn't work. We got found out. And then it was like, okay, we need to do something completely different. So the Unai stuff as well today, for me, from Arsenal fans, is so it's so obvious. Every time Unai does something good, they go back to, we sacked Arteta, or we sacked Unai for Arteta, and look at what a manager he was. But they failed to remember, or maybe on purpose, they failed to remember that Unai Emery left us in 13th and we were free falling. It wasn't after Baku where he got sacked. He had a preseason, he had more players come in, and he could not get a tune out of that group. So Unai is exactly where he needs to be. It's a perfect scenario for him with those players. They're playing for him, but Aubameyang and Lacazette and Ozil and these guys, they were not playing for this man. And they also, at some points, didn't play for Arteta. So, let's not act like we weren't there, But good for Unai. I'm happy that he's where he's at. And he's doing well. And I think we're with the manager that's best for us, So there you go, And even if it wasn't Arteta, it should have not been Unai that stayed. Even if we hired, if we needed to hire another manager and it wasn't Arteta, we should have never kept Unai Emery in the state that we were in. Let's see. Mark says, what on earth is Jess doing on at this time of night? I said I was going to do this stream after the Man City game. Said I was going to do it. And then also, every time, if I'm not doing consistent streams, you guys are on me, And so I'm like, okay, do a stream today. Obviously, we'll do a stream tomorrow after our game. And then so we're getting back to our daily thing. French says Arsenal have earned the Premier League title if they win it. If they win, in my opinion, no matter what me or any other City fan says, City can't say it isn't deserved. Arsenal have worked incredibly hard. Exactly. Let's see. Boy says, I have absolute faith in this version of Arsenal. Let them cook and mute those who have nothing but lemons growing on their trees. Ayonle says, I agree, Jess. People revise Arsenal history and have a soft spot for Unai, but wasn't the one for us. Can we just be grateful we are got a genius like Arteta who bleeds Arsenal? I guess my thing is I don't think they have a soft spot for Unai. I think there's always a narrative or an agenda brewing that suits their Arteta out narrative. So now it's, Zinchenko is crap, basically who's not playing and who do they feel like they can get an agenda going. Now it's Arteta hates Tierney. So anytime Zinchenko has a bad game, they use that as a stick to beat Arteta with. Do you know what I mean? And so with Unai, it's not really a soft spot because these are all the same people that wanted Unai out. They were the same people that were good evening. They were the same people saying he was a clown. The same people that did not want him at the club are, and I can understand feeling like we should have hired somebody different than Arteta after Unai was sacked. But the idea that Unai should have stayed, for me, is just revisionism in its definition. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm happy about Arteta and where we are with Arteta. If you're not, you're well within that, but I do question why. I would question why, based on what you've seen this season, why you'd be so against Arteta still. So yeah. Hugo Garcia says, agree 100%. Tawanda says, loved Emery, but he wasn't a good fit for Arsenal. Not where we were at that point. We were in crisis. It was too toxic. It was just bad, and so he was never going to make it. And the guy after the guy usually suffers, and I think some of it was just that we had just gotten out of the Arsenal 20 years. And so anybody that wasn't like Arsenal, we didn't play the same football. He didn't speak the best English, which shouldn't matter, but it kind of does to certain people. It just felt like an awkward fit. Let's see. Lucy says, for the Premier League, it would be better to see another team win it rather than City again. I know people I don't think people understand what a vice grip Manchester City have on the league. We've been comfortable for so long with City winning it because it means that you don't have to hear as much banter. Nobody really knows City fans like that. And because we feel like they've done it in a way that's maybe not the cleanest, it's kind of like, oh, it's okay. But in the way that they're going, as long as they have Pep, they're going to be unbeatable basically. And so I don't know why rivals are so I get it because they're like, okay, well then we don't have to hear Arsenal celebrate it. But, especially Man United fans, I find it very strange that they would want Manchester City to win the league. It's making their records look spooky. They're like, okay, well, because Man City could just keep winning from here. They really can. Let's see. So yeah. The Macronicle says Tierney is a proper left back. Zinchenko is a natural midfielder. In big away games, defending works over the other. That's all. Yeah, Tierney is a proper attacking left back, but again, he may be a better defender than Zinchenko. But let's not act like he's Aaron Wan-Bissaka in terms of his defending. He can get cooked just like everybody else. But I hear what you're saying, and I do think that we need some sort of different formation or a different group of defenders back there when we're going to the away in those away grounds. Mark Neighbor, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, enjoy a nice glass of champagne after the 3 points tomorrow. Just have a blessed evening. Thank you so much. I will use that for sure. And last but not least, I know it's getting, well, it's only 10 o'clock. It's not that bad. So lately, since I've been in California, you guys, or when I went to California, you guys remember that was like a couple weeks ago. I never got back on, England time. Like I never got back on England time. So I've been staying up till like 3 and 4 in the morning and sleeping in way later than I should. So right now, like usually I'd be really sleepy by now, but I'm just like wide awake. It's really weird. So I'll probably, I finished watching Love is Blind earlier, which was great. If you guys haven't watched Love is Blind, it's so good this season, but I'll find something else to watch before I go to sleep. Beef is also really good on Netflix too. Yeah. And Cool Dude says, champagne just for defeating West Ham. No, because I'm alive. Like you should celebrate every day that you're alive, you're breathing air, and you get to watch Arsenal play. Like, hello. Come on now. Let's see. Roman says, just watch Caicedo today closely. He's good, but don't understand the 80 million hype. And that's exactly where I was going to go with this next section. Been in the weeds on Twitter talking to people about Caicedo versus Rice, because after, Brighton and Caicedo beat Chelsea today 2-1, there were a lot of Arsenal fans saying, he's the one. Caicedo's the one. He's the guy. He's the one we need to be going for. He's clear of Rice. And I respect, everybody's opinion in terms of like, who they prefer, because all Arsenal fans are not going to have the same opinion on what player is best for us. But I guess my question was more based around why Caicedo over Rice, because statistically, when I look at the two of them and I compare them, Rice's passing is better. His ball progression is better. There's nothing really between them in terms of attacking metrics because both of them are more defensive minded. And defending wise, like Caicedo's a better tackler, but Declan Rice also defends pretty well, and he has a higher interception rate and stuff like that. So what makes Caicedo so much clearer than Rice? And I guess I kind of feel like because he's at Brighton, that's some of it. I think everything at Brighton is deemed to be a player that we need to go after because everything that Brighton touches is gold. But, that's not actually true because there are players that have left Brighton that have flopped, like Cucurella and Basuma. So it's not like everything that they do translates, but at the same time, like I just think Brighton is cool. Caicedo is the cool choice. People are saying that he's the next Conte, which there'll never be another Conte. There won't. Like he's a one of a kind player. Like there'll never be another one. Um, and he's just the cool choice. And for some reason, Declan Rice is looked at as uncool. I don't know if it's because he's English, or British. I don't know if he's from West Ham and he's not from the cool club Brighton, but I'm wondering what makes him so much what makes Caicedo so much better than Rice. Because when I watch Rice play, I feel like I'm watching an Arsenal player play. Caicedo, I think, he looks really good as well. But I don't see like this big difference, if that makes sense. Even though I respect that some people want other players over others. Aha says Brighton performance today was the best away performance at the Bridge I've ever seen. They could have legit scored 7 goals. They'll be tough to play against. Yeah, they're always tough to play against, so our win against them at the Amex earlier was like our first one in a very long time. So yeah, they'll be difficult to play. Diallo says, Jess, I had the same impression as you until I watched the scouting videos of Rice from the Arsenal Vision Boys. It left me spooked. I can't lie. What do you mean though? What do you mean? Like it left you, like when you mean spooked, you mean like you didn't, like Rice didn't look as good on the scouting as you thought he would look? Let me know. Hugo says it may be the similarity in system. I thought about that. Like, obviously, Caicedo comes from a more progressive system, so maybe he slots in perfectly where Rice would need a little bit of time because, quite frankly, he plays under two of the most pragmatic managers, ever in Southgate and David Moyes. So maybe it's a little bit of that, right? Let's see. Lynn says, we will see tomorrow from Rice because I feel that he will try to convince why Arsenal should buy him, and that could backfire as he is over trying. I don't want him to try hard today. I want him to try hard in the other games that they have coming up. I don't need him to try hard, against us. I really don't. But I think he's pretty much checked out, at West Ham. I've seen good performances from Rice this season, but nowhere near what he's been over the last couple of years. And so I think he's a little checked out, but if he's up for it tomorrow, that would piss me off because not this time, not this time. Let's see. Tony says Caicedo is a beast. He's just not the guy in a team. Rice is a superstar in a mid team. It's so hard to compare though. Arteta would cook with either or both. I'm calm as long as we get one or both. And yeah, I get that. And I think we'd be good with either, to be honest. Just like you're saying right there, I think we could do really well with either. But I see like some people are so dead against Rice, and I'm just like, it's not like he's Onana. Onana is the guy that I'm like, absolutely no, 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 no. But Rice or Caicedo, I take either one of them, and I still think that Rice, the intangibles as well, are also something that Arteta really likes is his leadership and being a captain and stuff like that. Those things go a long way, So yeah. Cool Dude says Caicedo was impressive today. Nobody could get the ball in the center circle besides him. He did have that bite and that like ball winning and all that kind of stuff. He had Enzo and a spliff. So yeah, I definitely see that. Dat says Rice for England is world class. Diallo says Rice don't look good in almost all of the relevant playlists. Let me see. That Clive and Elliott played, the stats didn't match what we saw at all. That's really interesting. I should go back and watch that one. I haven't watched that one, but I have to go back and watch it because I feel like when I watch him, I see a player that could play for Arsenal. You know what I mean? But sometimes the playlists really show you like the playlist was what showed me that Nunez probably wouldn't have been the best for us in what we're trying to do. But yeah, Afsar says Caicedo is better than Rice. I don't know if I believe it, but you know, I get that everybody has a different opinion. Blaze says, Jess, what do you think about Declan Rice? Do you think he can fit into Arteta's system? Yes, I do. I do think he can fit into Arteta's system. I think it just depends on what position they want him to play, and how Arteta envisions the team changing. I think this is the first iteration of this team, and we're seeing it with, xhaka and Partey, two players that in, maybe the midterm, like they won't be with us that much longer, like because they're getting on in age, whatever. And so, those two players probably won't be there, as long as like Odegaard is gonna be there, but those two are question marks. So maybe Arteta's looking at that position a little bit differently and wants more of a ball winner and a tempo setter. Thomas Partey, what makes him so good is that he has that ability, that elusiveness, that ability to drop the shoulder and get past people. He has a great passing range between the lines. But, I look at Rodri and I'm like, okay, is that what Arteta's looking for, is somebody like that? Because if you're looking for a Rodri, is somebody who's extremely intelligent, knows how to put out fires, a good interceptor, tackler type, always available every 4 days. I think that's really important, and controls the tempo of the game. And, I don't necessarily think that Thomas Partey always does that the best, even though he's really, really good. And so maybe the next iteration of this team and that six is a little bit different than Thomas Partey. So yeah. Mark says Rice has the humble personality and winner vibe about him. He will in time be the glue that holds it all together like Xhaka does currently. Ayanle says we can't lose this summer. Caicedo, Rice, Bellingham, and De Jong all available. We can't lose because everyone will be fighting for Bellingham. A lot of good options this summer. Hugo says a CDM who can drop and play as the third center back. That would say Rice to me more than Caicedo. Dropping back into that quarterback role is definitely more of a Declan Rice thing than a Caicedo thing, because one thing that Declan Rice does have that I'm not sure that Caicedo has is the long passing range. He doesn't have a big switch. He can play the ball in between the lines, but that seems more like Rice, to me. So yeah. Diallo says Rice would be a top signing. By the way, I'm just saying why some of us would prefer the Ecuadorian, which is fine. And I also think like this from Hugo Garcia, plus his height helps. I don't want our midfield getting real small. That's one of my biggest fears. I don't want my midfield getting small again. I would love for the CDM to be 6+ and for us to have another midfielder that's 6+, because Odegaard is already small, or it's not small, but like a little bit more slight. So, and I don't want to lose, looking at the way that we kind of got handled against Sporting, you could just kind of see like in Europe, it's a different game. We're not going to be controlling everything. Teams are going to try to make it attract me, and so in order to do that, you have to have the physicality in the legs, athleticism, and that's what we're kind of missing right now. And so height and strength, athleticism, mobility, those are things that I'm looking for in a midfield signing or two. Let's see. Errol says match of the day is coming on. Watching Spurs. Haha. Expressions was crying. Yeah. Cool Dude says Caicedo was built for a pressing team. Rice for the ones in the steady build. Diallo says Jess doesn't like us getting bullied anymore. I hear that, to be honest. I think that's the next step. I think we have the technical thing going. We can 90% of the league, 95% of the league. We are controlling the game. We're controlling the narrative. We are on the ball, but there's the couple of games, especially away from home, that in order to win those, we have to have more of the physicality, more of the ability. It's like Brentford. We have to make sure like Everton away doesn't happen again. Brentford doesn't happen again. Liverpool doesn't happen again. Newcastle doesn't happen. Like those games are the ones that I still feel like we're not quite there yet. And that's where that physicality is really going to come in, and in Europe. So yeah, I'm just gonna we don't need to to spam the chat. So you're kind of spamming. So I'm just gonna like remove you for a little bit. Liverpool versus Chelsea. Sorry. Simon says, what was the reason then for City to let Jesus go small? Well, the thing about well, one, Jesus is not. I think the biggest difference between Haaland and Jesus is not really the size; it's the clinical finishing. I think they were looking for a nailed-on striker, and Jesus also wanted starting minutes. But when I watch Gabriel Jesus, I'm not seeing somebody that I think his physicality, athleticism, and his kind of like his mentality goes under the radar. He's a very skillful player, but if you watch him play against most center backs, he's not getting bullied. So you can be small and not get bullied, but I would say Odegaard is the type of player that in those games that I just kind of mentioned goes missing because he doesn't have that about him. Like Gabriel Jesus and Odegaard are about the same size, like in the same height, but I look at Jesus and I see a fighter and an athlete and somebody that can get stuck in, where I don't necessarily see that with Odegaard all the time. So, but I think Jesus was mostly moved on from Manchester City because they were looking for a nailed-on striker, and Jesus knows like he didn't want the Alvarez role, and so there you go. But yeah, so yeah, I remember this. I remember this. Varane and Lisandro Martinez had a very difficult time with Jesus. So when he's top, like, and his top speed, top physicality, like he's ready to go, And I think one of the things that Arsene never quite got right, that Arteta would know this because he played under Arsene, was that he never really had that right balance. He had a lot of the technical ability in the team, but he started off with the perfect balance, and then as time went on, he tried to do the Barcelona thing in the Premier League, but we know it doesn't work because you have to have that balance. Pep's learned that. He had a smaller team that was more technical that sometimes, would get overrun, on the odd time it would get overrun because he didn't have that same level of physicality that he has now. And so I hope Arteta has that in the back of his mind and knows, okay, we have the technical stuff down, but now we need bigger players. And I think Arteta knows that. He brought in Thomas Partey, Gabriel, Ben White is his right back, so I think he knows that, but we just need the midfield is kind of like the next step for that. But yeah, there's 209 of you guys in here, which is amazing. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Kind of did the chit chat that I wanted to do. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy the rest of my evening. We will talk after Arsenal hopefully beat West Ham. But make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe if you are new. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. Bye.